Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Intercooler podcast with Dan Prosser and Andrew Frankel, episode 227. And it's a slightly different one.
Yeah.
I've been trawling through the classifieds.
I haven't.
No, I have.
I've no idea what's coming up.
You don't. You've got no clue
I'm
at all.
going into this completely blind. This scares me at all.
You'll be fine. So actually, I've been looking on piston heads. Just a bunch of different cars.
Yeah.
And mostly sort of modern-ish stuff. I haven't looked at any classics, any modern classics. This is mostly modern cars, typically performance cars, but a few different sectors, different price points. And I think it's just quite interesting to, as a sort of state of the market thing, to figure out what's going up, what's down, what's in demand, how are people voting with their wallets, and see what's going on in the market. So we're starting with a Ferrari 296 GTB.
Oh, okay.
And if you notice the price on this one, Andrew, that's quite a step, isn't it? It's quite a moment for these cars. This one is up for £199,900.
Yeah.
It is the cheapest 296 GTB I have seen.
Yeah.
Less than 200 grand. That is a great looking car. It's also a fantastic car to drive.
Yeah, so what do we know about this car? Do we know its age or its miles or anything about it in particular?
It's a 2022 car, 4,000 miles.
Yeah.
And
which really is nothing.
It's not. No, I mean, probably there won't be many that have done more miles than that.
But in terms of what that car is capable of doing,
it's
still
nothing. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon?
I'd love to know, because we know that these cars, they have a retail price and then there's a transaction price. It's the price that people pay once they've loaded them with extras. And I would think that the price of that car to its original owner would probably have begun with a 3.
Yeah, about 240 before any options.
Yeah.
And Ferrari will not let a car leave the showroom floor without a stack of options.
Yeah. And then you think, well, okay, so that's the advertised price. What would they actually deal at? And it is, we're not used to seeing this with Ferraris. We're not used to seeing this with two-seat mid-engine Ferraris. And clearly things like, Lussos and FFs have depreciated at a greater rate. And that has been the way, I think, frankly, of all cars, of all sort of, fast supercar type cars. It's always the sporting two-seaters that maintain their value the best. But this one hasn't. You would be able to find any number of 4 or 5-year-old F8s, this car's effective predecessor, which people will be asking more money for than this. So, yeah, I mean, it's something we have observed before, haven't we? That there is a reticence about buying these cars that have been mechanically downsized, even if their power outputs have gone up. So, obviously this car's predecessor was a twin turbo V8.
Yeah.
This is now a twin turbo V6 with hybrid attached. Do you think it's because people just think, oh, well, it's a smaller engine, it's only got 6 cylinders, or do you think there's actually concern out there about the longevity and reliability of the hybrid system? Is it a combination of it? Because the stupid thing is, a 296 GTB is one of the best cars I've ever driven, period. It just is. It is. I think a 296 GTB is an astonishingly brilliant car. And I'm not someone who just automatically falls in love with everything that he drives with a prancing horse in its nose. By no means. But that is, even by Ferrari's currently fairly supersonic standards, that is a piece of work.
It is tremendous.
It's mega. It's unbelievable.
So we did the big twin test, didn't we? 296 GTB versus McLaren 750S.
Yeah.
And we both, by a slim margin, gave the nod to the Ferrari.
Yes. Yeah, because I think we thought that absolutely balls to the wall in ideal conditions in the right environment.
Yeah.
And how often do you get those?
Yeah.
The McLaren was slightly better to drive. But actually, the rest of the time, because it was quieter and it was more comfortable, and it was, less in your face, the car is just fantastic. If you don't have you don't want the Assetto Fiorano nonsense on it.
No, you don't.
You just want a nice standard car. Beautiful.
And for some reason, though...
Great looking, too.
Yeah, but the market doesn't seem to love them. I mean, this one is probably down, for its original buyer, probably down 100 grand in not much time at all.
Yeah.
100 grand just gone up in smoke. So it is a fascinating thing. Why is that then? I mean, you asked... I think people look at a V6 and think it's a sports car engine, not a supercar engine.
Yeah.
I think that must be a big part of it. And we know that this car's predecessor, as you say, the F8 Tributo, they're still trading for really good money relative to 296s, for the age. So it is a very interesting one.
It's a good point you make. Name a strong-selling V6 supercar. Well, both generations of Honda NSX have V6s in them. First generation, fantastic. Second generation, not so great. Neither of them sold.
Do you have any intel on McLaren Artura?
Not on sale, not in terms of sales, no. But no, I don't actually have any intel on sales on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't showing, similar characteristics to the 296. And again, it's silly because the Artura is a fantastic car. It's so easy to live with, and it's so ridiculously fast and responses, and it is a fabulous machine. But I think that replacing a 4-litre V8 with a 3-litre V6 is conceptually problematic, even though objectively, in terms of everything that it does, it's clearly the right thing to do.
But this is the point. These are not objective cars. People do not buy these cars with their head, do they?
But even with the heart, an Artura sounds better.
It does.
The V6 sounds better than the V8.
Yeah.
And you get all these other benefits, like you can go to work at whatever time in the morning and not disturb anyone. You can just put it into electric mode. It just works. It's a really lovely car to live with. And yet, well, I mean, we don't know that this is happening with Arturas, but I do fear that it might.
Yeah, it might well do. Okay, so here's another one that I wanted to throw up on the screen. Ferrari 488, so the first of the turbocharged mid-engine Berlinettas. This is a 2016 car.
Yeah.
So quite an early one. 126,500. I think that is a fantastic looking car, actually. I remember seeing them at the motor show, probably Geneva. I guess it's in 2015 or 16. It must have been 15. And thinking the front end was just too plain and there wasn't enough aggression there. But actually, looking at the car as a whole,
itself, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
It's a cool looking car.
Yeah.
I remember driving these in Scotland, Evo Car of the Year, and being amazed at how sharp the turbo engine was, the response from the turbo engine. Really, really lively motor. But there were other things about it that, I mean, the steering felt so light and so quick. And it was off-putting for me initially, but it's one of those things that you sort of dial into over time, over a few miles, and it starts to feel okay again. What do you make of the 488?
When I first drove it, I think what struck me most was the astonishing increase of performance over its predecessor.
Yeah.
Over the 458.
It's a big uptick in power. Massive. 100 horsepower. Or something.
Yeah, and just a huge wave of additional torque.
Yeah, massive.
And you drove the car on its torque. 458, obviously the last of the naturally aspirated mid-engine Ferraris. And although this was a development of that car, 488 is essentially a very heavily facelifted 458. It felt, and it was, an entire performance category ahead. There were, obviously limitations with throttle response and sound and that with a turbo engine compared to a naturally aspirated engine. But actually, I think what impressed me most about it was how the chassis was just able to absorb all that additional energy. And I can remember doing one of the Autocar handling day things up at Anglesey, one of those things, and just flinging it around. And this wasn't a pista, although we did do that later. This was just a completely standard road car. and just having so much fun with it, just skidding it about all over the place. And I think that, I think so often we still think today of Ferraris as being, amazing engines with cars attached to them. But actually, I think the chassis on that car is, if anything, even more impressive than the engine. And as a whole package, apart from that, I look at that interior now and it does feel quite clunky and dated and actually with a bit of a turn off for me. But as a thing to get in the drive, brilliant.
Would you, given what kind of car this is, would you feel like you were losing something by choosing a 488 over the 458 and having turbos rather than a screaming NA V8? Would that bother you?
If it were me now, I'd get a 458 because the reason I would buy one now probably wouldn't be the reason that most people bought one new. I would buy it now as a recreation. I think the 458 is a prettier car.
Yeah.
And I love the sound and I think it went to 9 or something.
Yeah.
The rev range of that naturally aspirated engine. And I also just really like the idea of the last mid-engine naturally aspirated Ferrari. But you've seen 458 prices?
No.
Yeah, they're strong.
Are they strong?
Yeah.
Interesting.
People want that.
Yeah. Chris Harris has just bought one, hasn't he?
Has he really?
He has.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know how public he's been about that. But anyway, he loves it.
Yeah, I mean, James May has, I think, is it the last ever 458 Speciale?
Yeah.
And I think that of all the cars that he has, it's probably the one or one of the ones which he would be most keen not to get rid of.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're mega.
Here we go. Here's a bit of you.
Oh, this is all me.
BMW.
28 grand.
BMW i8.
Wow.
2014 car, 55,000 miles.
Yeah.
28.5 grand.
Yeah.
They're coming down, aren't they?
Bring it on.
They're on their way.
Bring it. 28 grand. 55. Forget the 55,000 miles. As long as it's been all right. As long as it's been looked after. It's got the right stamps. I wouldn't give that a second thought.
No.
I love these things. I think they are. Again, BMW made 2 incredible electric cars or electrified cars.
Yeah.
Both of them essentially failed because they were just too far ahead of their time. I can remember comparing this to, when Honda produced the second generation NSX. And you looked at that, the i8, which had a carbon tub, a decent electric-only range. You could plug it in at home. You can't do any of those things with an NSX. And so people go, well, it's only got a 3-cylinder mini engine. But actually, I really like the way that it sounded. I know some people say, well, it's quite synthesized, but all engine sounds are synthesized these days.
Yeah.
I think the car looks amazing. I love the way that it handled it. Skinny little tires.
That's the fun thing about it. It's not overtired
Not at all. Not at all. I had one of these things for a year, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, when I look back over all the long-term cars I've been lucky enough to run over the years, I'm sure that will be right up there with a 720S as one of the ones that I remember most fondly.
28 grand.
28. I mean, that's an electric Vauxhall Corsa. It is, and you get this carbon car that looks like that and drives that well. The other thing is you don't hear stories about them. You don't hear people, oh yeah, but yeah, you can't get an i8 because this, the wheels fall off or the engine. You just don't. And I think that BMW at the time, because they were being so far out there and so adventurous, I think they must have thought to themselves, we're going to have to completely over-engineer this car because we simply cannot afford for there to be any question marks hanging over it at all. I would have that 50. Oh.
I wonder how commercially this car did. Okay, so you're right.
Not
it was
great.
massively over-engineered. It was at the forefront of technology, so I'm sure there weren't great profit margins in there.
No.
But was it considered a sales success within BMW?
I mean,
but there was a clamour for them, wasn't there? And people wanted them, and they were it cars for a while. But was that mostly to do with the design? Because it does look amazing.
I mean, I think the only question you're going to need to ask yourself on that one is why didn't they replace it?
Yeah.
If it had been that good, they'd have done another.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
I wonder if it's just too expensive to do.
Maybe. I mean, it was. I mean, and hats off to BMW for doing it properly. And just coming up with, a bespoke tub for the. Oh, blimey.
We often say, with regard to plug-in hybrids, particularly performance cars, that they can be really, really good, but the motor needs to be characterful. It needs to be a great engine in its own right.
Yeah.
Is this the car that bucks that trend?
I think it does have a great engine.
Do you?
No, okay, no. Great's the wrong word. I think the engine in this is fine, and it's a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder engine out of you can get the same thing in a Mini Cooper. But all I would say is just go and drive it.
Yeah.
Listen to it. Feel the way that it responds. I am talking about this car from the point of view of a bloke in late middle age, but and maybe it's not quite exciting enough, and it's not a car for be skidding about on the limit. It's just not that kind. I mean, I did drive mine around a track, and it was kind of okay, but it understeered a bit.
It is seconds slower than a comparable 911 around a track.
Oh,
whole seconds
days, yeah, absolutely. But it's not what it's for.
No,
I couldn't care less about that.
No,
I mean, so what? I just the only thing there are two things about it which I hated. One was every time you parked it anywhere, in a long-term car park at an airport or a supermarket or at a racetrack or whatever, you always had to go and park it somewhere where no one could park next to you. Because someone parked too close to you, literally couldn't get in the car.
Because of the doors.
It's not a question of it being a bit uncomfortable or a bit undignified. You couldn't get in the car.
Because of that.
Yeah.
The doors going up, yeah.
And the other thing that I hated about it, and maybe it would be less so now, was just the attention it got.
Yeah. What about ingress, egress, as they call it, getting in and out? It's a bit of a nuisance.
Dead easy to get into. Just fall into the thing. Literally, just aim your backside at the seat and let
collapse.
Go. That's dead easy. Getting out, again, overweight bloke, late middle age, slightly dodgy knees. But, I don't think a 911 is much better. And nobody talks about that.
Okay. Actually, I'm not sure I agree. I always found the i8 a nuisance to get into because it's got that very high sill and quite slim doors. So I do often sort of...
You need to aim better.
Maybe that's it. Just better aim. So, let's mix it up a little bit. Volkswagen Golf GTI Performance. This is a Mark 7.5. 2019 car, a manual. So it is a performance with 240 something horsepower. This one's up for a fraction under 16 grand.
Must have done a stack of miles.
70,000.
Yeah.
So I had one of these.
Yeah.
And mine was perfect. It had the 18-inch wheels like this car.
Yeah.
It was grey. Manual, tartan, performance, but with adaptive dampers. That specific combination is really hard to find.
Yeah.
It's what you want.
Yeah.
And honestly, so we did Mark 7.5 GTI versus 8.5 GTI recently as a story.
And the 7.5 was on the wrong wheels.
It was on the 19s.
Yeah.
But even so, it just walked that test, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. and the 8.5 is not a bad car.
It's not.
Not a bad car. I mean, that says everything about how good the 7.5 is and really very little about, the 8.5 is, is kind of, a nice, decent Golf GTI. 7 but we said this before about all kinds of 7.5 Golfs. That was peak Golf, wasn't it?
So good. They went above.
Doesn't matter whether you talk about an R, a GTI, or in the case of my family wagon, an SE Nav.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is the cheapest 7.5 you could buy with multi-link rear suspension.
I was stunned by your car. I had a quick go in it.
Yeah.
A few days ago. The ride is just fantastic.
It's
steering, handling.
Good. Ridiculously good for an absolutely cooking 1.5 supermarket trolley.
Yeah.
It's every time I get in it, which isn't as often as I should because my wife tends to spend most of her time in it, and I drive it. I just find myself muttering, "This is such a good car." It actually really annoys her, but it's what strikes you every time you get in it. It's always better than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved my GTI. I wish I could have kept it, but I just didn't use it. I wasn't using it, and it was...
Well, then you got to get rid of it.
It was too valuable. It was worth too much money. I was spending too much a month on it for something to just be an ornament on my front drive.
Yeah.
That's why I've got my up GTI now, because, again, that thing hasn't moved now for 2 weeks at least. It costs a fraction to buy and run compared to the Golf. Yeah. So I don't mind. I don't mind it just sitting there. It doesn't take up much space.
We came here today in a Jeep Wrangler.
We did.
Yeah.
Which actually I quite like. I'm gonna write something about this.
There's something about cars. I think that a car can get away with being quite crap as long as it's honest.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for and a lot to be read into cars like the Wrangler, which I'm not saying it is quite. I haven't driven it yet, so I'm not saying that. But if it did turn out to be, but there was a certain pleasing authenticity to it, I think you'd be prepared to forgive it quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I booked one in because I'd never driven a Wrangler before.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what they were about.
Yeah.
I knew. So, broadly speaking, the Second World War, not even the Second World War, I suppose, but that era gave us the original Land Rover, the Willys Jeep,
Yeah, definitely.
and the G-Wagon.
Yeah.
And they're the three that...
G-Wagon was a bit later, wasn't it?
Was it a bit later?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But they're the three that sort of survive.
Yeah.
They've evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And there are variants out there still today.
Yeah.
And clearly the Defender is a very different car to...
Today, yeah.
Today it is, yeah. The G-Wagon perhaps as well. But I think the Wrangler is probably the one that has stayed truest.
Yeah, it's still a body bolted onto a leather chassis, and it sort of rattles about a bit. But yeah.
Yeah, it is quite a charming car. I was surprised. I am enjoying it. So here we go. Talking of Land Rovers, L405 Range Rover. So the previous one.
You really picked them today, haven't you?
I tried. I did try. So this is a I can't see the year, but it's a 62 plate. So 2012 car. So an early L405.
Yeah.
83,000 miles. This one's a V8 diesel.
The best engine ever to go in a Range Rover.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
15.5 grand. Sorry, 14.5 grand.
Yeah, so transaction price 13 something. Yeah. Is it white?
It's silver.
Okay.
How much of a nuisance is that going to be, though? If something goes, it's a bill, isn't it?
Okay, so I've got a brother who has a 4.4 V8 diesel. What's the previous one? L322.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which has done 100 and something thousand miles. Good as gold. And that's the problem. So I've also got another mate who's got. In fact, by the time this goes out, I would have written something about it on the TI website now. He's got a Discovery 4, which has done 220 something thousand miles. Absolutely good. Apart from the fact that because of the way he drives it, it gets through tires and brakes like there's no tomorrow. But the car itself, I mean, it's barely ever gone wrong. And there is this perception, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but the perception is, and certainly in my mind, is you get a good one, you get a bad one.
Yep.
There seems to be very little in between. You either get cars which are like, Toyota Land Cruiser dependable, or you get basket cases which have problems with their transfer boxes and this, that, and the other. But so it is, I think, I'm not an expert on these things. My perception is that it is a bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
You may get unlucky. I would really, 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 with a car like this, be so... If this didn't come with a full history and every bill, I'd run a bloody mile.
Yeah.
Because I'd be asking myself why.
Yeah.
But if it had a full history, it had all the right sorts of stamps in it, and all the bills there, so you could see what had been done, and so you could build up in your mind a picture of whether this had turned out to be a decent car or not, then I just love the idea.
It would be brilliant if you got a good one, if you lucked in, because they look great.
Yeah.
They're super plush inside. They're quiet and comfy and capable.
Yeah. And that engine, all that torque, it's such a well-suited engine to that car. Love it.
It would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Your nephew's got one.
Yes. Yeah. Well, his is a sport, isn't it?
I think his is a full fat one.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
I should know this.
But he's out in LA now, isn't he?
Yes. I'm going to go and see him next week, so I will report back.
Yeah, let us know.
Okay.
That would be interesting. I can't remember what order I did these in now, so this is going to be a bit of a surprise for me.
Here we go.
Ooh, blimey. Gosh. Wow. So this is a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a current one. So a 992. This is a 2023 car.
Yeah.
Up for £267,000.
Yeah.
That's at a Porsche main dealer.
Yeah.
This one is bright yellow with red graphics and red wheels.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, is it?
No. 2022, did you say?
23.
23. How many miles?
231.
What would list on that be?
No, maybe less than two.
It's a late one, I think.
Yeah, I think it's high ones. Yeah.
So you're still paying significantly over the odds. I mean, they are amazing track cars. They are also, because they have that brilliant configurability where you can play with everything from your diff to your dampers on the steering wheel. You can actually make them ride better than a normal GT3, which is bizarre. there is just something about those cars. I mean, I love driving them around racetracks, but the fact that, to me, it's a silly thing, but the thing that compromises that car for me is it doesn't have a boot. If you look on the bonnet of that, you see those intakes, and it's all to do with the aero. It's all to do with cooling and airflow over the car to generate enormous amounts of downforce, and the upshot of it is that the car has essentially lost its boot, which means you can't. Well, you can go somewhere in it, but you need to go on your own.
Yeah,
and I feel very conflicted with this car because although it is probably one of the best driving 911s that there has ever been, I'm not sure that even if I was in that league, that's what I would have, because I just like cars which are just usable and don't make you have to think, oh well, I can't use that car, or maybe I can use it, but if I did that, I'd have to then do something else, and I have to figure out how to get that there. I just like to be a car that I can just get in and go. So, yeah, I mean, I admire them. I really, really like them, but for me also, if I possibly could, and I know these are even more money, but an ST.
Oh, so that's the thing about these cars. People were paying at least 200 grand over the odds when these things were brand new. People did flip them and turn a 200 grand tax-free profit. We know that's true.
So it's possible that someone's actually, despite the fact that this costs more than list, even now, that someone has already lost a stack of money on this car.
They will have done. But I don't understand why people choose to pay 200 grand over the odds when, I mean, it seemed obvious to me that they were going to come down.
But do we know? I mean, we know that the cars are advertised.
No. But there are
the people have done
real accounts of people having done it.
But then, you and I, what we're very bad at is being able to crawl into the heads of extremely wealthy people.
So that's it. There might just be people out there who don't care.
Yeah,
it's not a big deal to them.
The sums of money are not.
They want the car.
Yeah, they want the car.
Yeah,
they don't want to be the one who hasn't got one. All their mates have got one. So they do it. Boo. Yeah,
scary thought, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Losing some six-figure sum. Well, here we go. This is perhaps more our league, although it's still well at my reach. This is a Porsche Cayman, so a 981 GT4. So the first of the GT4s. This is a 2015 car, so an early one, 46,000 miles.
Yeah.
£54,000. These were 60-something list when they were brand new.
Yeah.
65 maybe.
Yeah.
So that has held on to a lot of that value, hasn't it? 54 grand. It's not the cheapest GT Porsche you can buy. Oh, is it? No, can you get a 996? No, that probably is the cheapest Porsche Motorsport car available.
A Gen 1 996 GT3.
It's probably 60 something.
Yeah, it'd be more than that. Yeah, it'd be more than that.
So that is entry level to the Porsche GT thing.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. They are fantastic fun to drive. They don't have the engine.
That's the thing.
Which is the thing that's going to limit their long-term appeal and their values.
Yeah, engine and gear ratios. Is that a PDK?
So I don't think there was a PDK of the first gen.
Maybe not.
So this one is a manual.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's got 380 horsepower. It's still a good engine. It's a 3.8 litre flat six NA.
It's a Carrera S engine, something like that.
Yeah, power kit one. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice engine, but that's the thing about those GT cars. You only have to go and drive, a GT3 or current GT4 RS, which has the full fat race department engine. Basically the same engine that they put in the Carrera Cup car. Yeah, they are completely different. I'm not saying that's a reason to not get that, because if it did have that engine in it, the point is that it wouldn't be costing 53,890 quid. It would be, be far more expensive than that. And I love the way that they handle. I don't think I'm any longer. Maybe it's just that particular car and the colour, but I'm not that knocked out by the way that it looks.
I think that's an awkward angle for it as well. Yeah. I don't think white is the right colour for that car, but red with. I'm sure you could get silver wheels. That looked superb.
Yeah,
I thought they looked absolutely brilliant.
So money aside, that generation or current generation GT4.
So I did the test actually a few years ago. And the new one is an easier car to live with.
Yeah.
I think slightly more supple ride. It's got a much lighter clutch.
Yeah.
The clutch pedal in these things is actually pretty heavy going.
4-litre engine.
Yeah. I think the earlier car's probably a bit more of a more special recreation, a weekend thing.
Yeah.
But if you want to do mega miles or use it more often.
Yeah. But then would you not then just have a GTS?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these, this is one of those cars that I've always said to myself, I'll have one someday.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's still true. Do I still feel that way? Maybe, but I've had some epic drives in these cars up on the North Coast 500, and it blew me away.
You can really push them, can't you?
Oh,
you can push and push and push, and you get to that point where you suddenly realise that you ought to be having a quiet word with yourself because it's possible that you're just enjoying yourself a bit too much.
Yeah.
That kind of car, they have a certain addictive quality to them, don't they?
The ratios are a problem.
Yeah.
They are a problem, and you find yourself...
But you can get a short diff for them. Someone will do an aftermarket short diff for them, won't they?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the problem is, so the ratios as they are, second will go well beyond 70 miles an hour.
Yeah. So
really, legally speaking, there's no need to get out of second in the UK on the road.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the gear shift itself is wonderful. It's superb. But you just don't get to do it very often.
No. And because the engines they're not peaky, but they need to be kept on the boil, and so you really do have to rev them out to make sure you maintain your progress in the next gear. And yeah, I mean, it's not a deal breaker by any means, but it is a flaw of all those naturally aspirated 911s of that era, 911s and Caymans and Boxsters of that era.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
it is true. All right, so. Of course.
How could we possibly have a podcast without one of these? Well, I think I should just shut up and let you get on with it. I mean, that's not expensive though, is it?
Not really. I mean, let's not dwell on this one too long. We've spoken about these cars before.
For people not watching this on YouTube, we are looking at an Alpine A110.
Yeah, so this is a pure, which is what mine was. Yeah, base car. This one's white. It's a 2019 car like mine, 24,000 miles.
Yeah.
So there are plenty out there with more miles, but this is actually the cheapest one that I could find on piston heads.
Do you think that's because it's white?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't like the black wheels.
No.
I'm not into the black. White and black, and black wheels, no, doesn't work for me at all. But actually, there are two shades of white. There's a flat white and a sort of metallic one with a blue sparkle, with a blue sparkle in it, which is lovely in the sunlight. I don't think this is that. This one's up for 34,750. It is on piston heads at least, the cheapest one.
They don't go wrong, do they?
No. You're not. Well, I'm not hearing about that.
No, nor am I. And they've been around for long enough now that if there were
5 or 6 years,
if there were issues, you'd kind of be hearing about them by now.
Yeah, you would. So I mean, that is the cheapest one, but even so, that's held on to 70-something% of its value in 5 years.
Yeah,
there aren't many cars that do that. No. A Caterham certainly will. Some Lotuses have done, but otherwise, I mean, it's unusual at this price point to find something that holds on to its value so much.
Yeah, and it's a sort of slightly paradoxical thing, because on the one hand, you think, well, it's held on to so much of its value. On the other hand, you look at that car and you look at that price and you think, wow, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Well, I do.
Yeah. Well, for what you're getting.
I know what that'll be like to drive, and I think for 35 grand, that strikes me as being an awful lot of car for that kind of money.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But if they were following the normal trend of a typical car and losing half its value in 3 years...
Yeah, they'd be 22 now.
That'd be low 20s.
Yeah.
And it is quite frustrating that they're not.
Yeah.
But if you get into one now at 35 grand or something, it will depreciate very, very slowly.
Very slowly. Yeah. And I guess that's, because it's, it's what we've talked about on previous podcasts many times. It is a proper... authentic car that has among those who know a fantastic reputation, but also because they never sold particularly well, there just aren't that many of them out there.
Well, and the other thing is it's not going to be replaced like for like.
No.
So I mean, I think it has to go off sale fairly soon. Maybe it's a legislation thing, or Alpine are winding it up or something. But
that'll be really sad.
Yeah. So I think they built the 20,000th in December last year, maybe.
Okay.
Around then.
Yeah.
So it's low 20,000s. So in total, maybe there'll be fewer than 25,000 A110s worldwide, which is not mega numbers at all.
No.
Only a few thousand a year.
Yeah.
So that suggests to me that they will hold their value
sure they will.
Pretty well from here.
Sure they will.
All right. So we've only got a couple left.
Okay.
Aston Martin Vantage.
Yeah.
So this is the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 one.
Yeah.
Mercedes engine.
Yeah.
£71,500.
Yeah.
2019 car. with 29,000 miles.
Not an F1 edition.
No, it's not. 500 horsepower.
Yeah.
This is the one with the controversial grille.
Yeah.
That looks a bit like a... What kind of fish? Does it look like a trout?
It does look a trout. Well, some kind of fish.
Which it is a bit of a shame that... Because they fixed the grille later on, didn't they? Or certainly made one available.
They made one available, yeah. And now the all-new one's got the grille. Yeah, and there's no trout option.
Yeah.
What do we think of these?
I have to say, apart from the grille, the shape of that car from this angle is spectacular. The rear haunches, how low the roof looks.
Yeah.
How wide and muscular it looks.
Yeah.
That's a good-looking car, I think.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's still that much money.
To me, that does look quite pricey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, maybe that says a lot about how, because I know that Aston Martin have worked a huge amount on this, and how hard they have worked to reduce dealer stock and to shore up the residuals. I mean, if you showed me that car, I would have thought, early 60s, but, it's up there in the early 70s. Does that float your boat?
The trouble for me with this car is that the Vantage before it, so the 4.7 litre naturally aspirated one, manual box, a much simpler car.
Yeah.
They could be a bit of a pain, those things, in just normal use. They've got that fly-off handbrake. It's very easy to slip the clutch. They can feel quite jiggly at low speeds. But
terrible navigation and all that sort of stuff.
Hopeless.
Shocking, yeah.
But once you get up to speed on a good road, they flow like little else. They are wonderful.
Yeah.
I've had some of the best drives of my life, actually.
Yeah, me too.
In those cars, the 4.7.
Yeah.
And this one just lost that feel.
See, when I first drove this one, they launched it down at Portimao, I think.
Yeah.
Decent road route, decent track. And I thought to myself, I went into it thinking, this is going to be tricky because it's so much heavier than the last one. It's only got a Slashmatic gearbox, and I actually came out of it thinking they'd done a pretty good job here. Then, a while later, I drove the F1 edition.
Yeah.
And I just suddenly thought, okay, that's what this car should have been all along. So to me, it's kind of caught a bit betwixt and between.
Yeah, it is.
Between the previous generation 4.7, which I adored, and then suddenly you realise how good that car could have been. And to me, the looks are slightly problematic. It's not a car that I have sort of... I kind of warmed to it a bit at the beginning, but it's not a car that has stayed with me.
Yeah, I understand.
And the interior is a bit sort of shonky, and but
the F1 edition is a fantastic car.
The F1 edition is such a step.
And then there's a new one now, isn't there? Brand new Vantage.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's a big evolution on this car.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on the looks. The headlights look a bit awkward for me.
I am sold on the look. I think it looks great. I think it looks fantastic. So much better than that.
But they talk about it now being a really focused driver's car.
Yeah.
And Sutcliffe reviewed it for us on the launch.
Yeah, he was knocked out by it, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
He said he'd have it over a 911 turbo.
Yeah.
We need to do that soon, don't we? We need to find out for ourselves.
Well, it's not through any lack of trying on our behalf.
And
Aston Martin, if you're listening, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you do.
They have said we can do it, just not yet.
Yeah, okay, it's going to take a bit of time.
Yeah.
And is it worth putting the new AMG GT in that test?
I do think it's worth putting it in there because I just think it's more interesting. I just think, and you can choose, can't you, how to do it. It can be part of the main test, or it can be a sidebar at the side. But yeah, I mean, do I think that people will be looking at that and thinking, "Oh, wish that wasn't there"? I think people would be. I think it's really interesting. Definitely put it in.
Yeah,
if we can.
Okay, so I believe this is the final one.
Oh,
it is.
Where's it gone?
It's gone. We're here. Jaguar F-Type. So this is it's not quite the earliest one, but it's the earliest one without moon miles on it. This is a £19,500 car.
Yeah.
F-Type S convertible.
Yeah.
2013 car.
Yeah.
82,000 miles.
Yeah.
So it is the S with the 380 horsepower engine.
Yeah.
I know you would always have the V8 given the choice.
Yeah.
But given that
and I'd always have a coupe given the choice.
Yeah, I would as well.
Yeah.
But you're looking at significantly more money.
Yeah.
For certainly a V8 coupe, you really are.
Yeah.
Sub 20 grand for one of these?
Sounds about right to me. Yeah. I mean, nice car when it came out. Great looking car. Ian Callan did a fantastic job on it. to drive, not a landmark. I think the V6 engines, the supercharged V6 is a good engine. It's a good car, but I think when you're driving it, I'm afraid it's a terrible thing to say, and it's such a cliche thing to say, but you're just driving it thinking, I'd just rather be in a 911.
That's the problem.
But then again, you pay so much more. I mean, what would a 10-year-old 911 cab be?
Twice the price, isn't it?
Probably twice the price. Yeah. So I think it is a lot of good-looking and pretty good driving car for the money. But sometimes, you just look at a car and it just, we had the BMW i8 on earlier, and you just look at that and you think, yeah, that's just a bit of me. That isn't a bit of me.
Really?
No.
God,
if it were a V8 coupe, I'd be all over it.
Yeah, interesting.
Even if it were a V6S coupe, cars like that, I think, and I thought so. I think the coupe is even better looking.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, it's just a bit more me.
So Ian, when we did our live podcast with him last month, he was very, very candid and honest about the F-Type. And he says the problem with the F-Type is that the engine is in the wrong place. This is his view. He really thinks that should be a mid-engine car.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and
he really fought for that.
Yeah, and and it must be galling for him, having already done a mid-engine Aston Vantage and had that taken away from him.
Yeah.
Before he ever got anywhere near the F-Type. So yeah, I think he's probably right.
Yeah.
I think it would have been much more special. I'd love to have seen what it would look like.
Yeah.
I might ask him, because I'm sure he's got mock-ups of what it would have looked like.
He will.
Yeah, I mean, a really so if this isn't sounding damning with faint praise, a really nice car for somebody else.
Yeah, ouch. See, I think I'm probably a bit more drawn to this car than you are.
Yeah.
I would never choose a cab over a coupe. I would never choose one. I prefer coupes, generally speaking. I rarely drive with the roof off if I'm in a convertible. But for £19,500, you probably get that for 19 grand. It's a 2013 car, so it's 11 years old now, but it's not an ancient old thing.
Sorry, how many miles again?
82.
Would you be worried about that?
I don't know. I think I don't hear a lot about these cars.
No, you don't.
The thing is, the Vantages you do. The naturally aspirated 4.3 or 4.7 Vantage. We do hear about people having issues with those.
Well, we know someone, don't we?
We do.
Who's had to have another engine for theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think these, because that is a proven old warhorse of an engine.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a bit more straightforward.
Don't know.
I would be quite happy smoking around in one of those, though. Just need 19.5 grand.
There you
go. Okay, so that's all I had. But that's quite an interesting sort of cross section, isn't it?
Yeah.
One big 4x4 SUV thing, a hot hatch, and a bunch of sports cars at different price points. Takeaways, what's going on in the market then? I mean, it does seem as though plug-in hybrid cars, if we take the 296 GTB as an example, they are not as popular as their predecessors with the full-size engines.
But I wonder whether that's just going to be, whether there's a period of acclimatization, adjustment going, and then maybe people will actually think that, or maybe people will just go, sorry, I want 8 cylinders, not 6.
People do talk at the moment about the market being slow and perhaps even a bit depressed. So I think it probably is a buyer's market at the moment.
Yeah.
And if you've got
for certain sorts of cars, not for more sort of routine stuff, because people are hanging on to them because they don't want to be forced into EVs. But for these I think it is a buyer's market, and for lots of these cars, they are plentiful.
Yeah.
So never just buy the first one you come across. There are lots. There will always be another car. I think that the buyer holds most of the cards at the moment.
And have a haggle.
Drive a bargain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, that's quite good. I think we should do that again at some point. Maybe you can pick out a bunch of cars.
I'd like
to. We need to look at some older stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
Perhaps some more esoteric stuff.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Good. Okay, well, thanks to everyone listening and watching. If you are watching, remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That really helps. If you're just listening, follow the show on whichever podcast app you use. Hit the follow button, the subscribe button, or the little plus icon. The point there is that you will never miss an episode, but when you do that, it also helps other people find this show, so it helps us as well. So do that for us. Thank you. And in return, we'll keep doing this podcast every week.